Welcome to Nights at Mausoleum Manor, a true horror stories podcast by Multi James 95. If you're new to this channel, please don't forget to click the subscribe button and the notification bell for more updates and content. After 2 years of inactivity, we are back at this foreboding manor for more frightening stories of history. To our first guests, welcome back. As for new listeners and guests, welcome to my abode. As we gather in this grand drawing room of the mansion, sitting before this large fireplace to keep warm, let us all join hands as we get transported to a new place where a horror story is set. If you lived in or visited the city of Pasay located in the Metro Manila region of the Philippines, chances are that you passed or visited the Cultural Center of the Philippines complex, which consists of eye-capturing brutalist buildings and a residential mansion known as Coconut Palace. But one building in this complex, located in the city's outskirts near Rojas Boulevard, stands from the rest of them, dark and foreboding. Situated beside Sofitel Philippine Plaza Hotel, it holds a gruesome history held hidden in slumber for decades until now. And now we are here at the CCP complex and we are approaching this foreboding structure. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to direct your attention to the center stage as the macabre master of ceremonies, no other than Satan or Lucifer himself, pulls back the curtains to reveal this grandeur edifice we are about to tour in the dead of the night, the Manila Film Center. Built with good intentions, it was a symbol of glamour where Hollywood celebrities used to walk and celebrate, but it soon became the house of horrors when greed and vanity overstepped common sense. Because of a tragic accident that happened during the final stages of its construction in 1981, the Manila Film Center has joined the list of reportedly haunted locations in the Philippines and the entire world. The hauntings in relation to the tragedy were discussed in TV shows. I will go back there later as we discuss the hauntings as a whole. First, let's ascend these steps as we look at the history of this dark building, deemed as an edifice complex, a term coined by architect Gerald Lico, defined as an obsession and compulsion to build edifices as hallmarks of greatness. It was believed that the film center was conceptualized because of two of Hollywood's greatest movie directors, American Francis Ford Coppola and Australian Peter Weir. Both made films about Asia and they filmed in the Philippines, choosing the country as a stand-in for Cambodia and Indonesia. The then incumbent First Lady Imelda Romualdez Marcos, wanting the nation to be a global icon for stature and glamour, was already delighted. As a way to promote Filipino culture, Imelda Marcos made what would be her last works to showcase the nation. The Philippines did not have an official national film archive back then, and part of these last works is a project involving an international film festival attended by big names of cinema. UNESCO was consulted on this. According to them, Imelda wanted to make the nation a cultural center. According to them, Imelda wanted to make the nation a cultural center of Asia and a competitor to France's Cannes Film Festival. Imelda also happened to include other people to this plan. One of them was Betty Benitez, spouse of the then Deputy MHS Minister Jose Conrado Benitez. She acted as a supervisor. And here's another person, Ramon Ignacio, Senior Technology Officer at the Technology Resource Center. He prepared the feasibility study and conceptualized the project and its various components. For architecture and design, she passed over the Negros native Leandro Luxin Sr., who later became the national artist for architecture in the Philippines, and took in Froilan Home. The building drew inspiration from the Parthenon in Greece, a temple dedicated to the goddess Athena. Its columns were intended to be wildly coconut-shaped, But this was avoided thanks to Leandro Locsin Sr.'s interventions. So that means even though Froilan Hong was the architect, some of this work was done by Leandro Locsin Sr., at least in part. With the plans completed and finalized, the preparations became underway. I'd be glad to call this project the Grand One, for lack of a better term. This was also called the Film Palace as nothing like this in Asia had ever been done before. Among the Film Center's project components were the 360-degree theater to show past and present historical and tourism scenes for future generations, the film financing loan program to address the funding of meritable films, the Filipino film archiving using digital storage, which was then little known during those times, film database and information system, filmmaking and blow-up laboratory, viewing rooms for the board of censors, and other minor subcomponents. Skeptics call this plan as extravagant public relations ploy designed to give credibility to an oppressive, repressive, and dictatorial regime. Despite the futuristic and concept creativity of Ignacio, only two of these project components were done: the auditoria and the film archives. The building began construction on reclaimed land in 1981. Deadline was tight and everything was to be kept in time. Nothing to waste, lest Imelda and the nation be embarrassed to the world. To do this, 4,000 workers were hired, working in 3 shifts across 24 hours. 1,000 of them constructed the lobby in 72 hours, a job which would normally entail 6 weeks of labor. This was indeed a rushed construction just to finish fast to allow the hosting of the 1982 Manila International Film Festival. In a matter of a month, construction reached the 4th floor. Well, you know the saying, what Imelda wanted, Imelda got it fast. This was reflected in 1974 when the Philippines became the host to the year's Miss Universe pageant. Its venue, the 8,500-seater Francisco Balagtas Folk Arts Theater, also designed by Leandro Locsin Sr., and also part of the CCP complex, was built in a record of 77 days and was finished in time for the pageant. But all of this grandeur, planning, financing, and construction would take a fatal turn in November 1981, the turn that would drive an already angered nation to further disgust and would haunt us all for the rest of our lives until the day we die. This was the root of the horrors of this building. Are you ready to hear it? Shh. Listen. Do you hear those souls singing their songs of pain? This will be our background as we tell you the story of the tragedy of this building. November 17, 1981, around 3 a.m., the devil's hour. As the rest of the nation continues to sleep, the night shift workers were pouring quick dry cement over the 4th floor's leveled scaffoldings, while another group of men were pouring additional layer of cement on the same floor. The whole scaffolding collapsed, its steel bars and wet cement plunging down to the ground floor, taking 169 workers with it. They fell into the quick-drying wet cement. The cause was that they kept pouring quick-drying cement in before other layers dried, and this was not a standard for construction. Not to mention that it was not just wet cement alone, but too much on each floor caused the collapse. On-site workers immediately acted in full adrenaline to rescue their comrades. The site became ground zero, filled with fear, despair, and anger. Former public relations officer for the Experimental Cinema of the Philippines and the Manila International Film Festival, Nena Benigno, herself saw the immediate aftermath of the accident. She would later recall in an interview, and I quote, "What I understand was that the 4th floor, they had put quick dry cement on each floor, and you're supposed to put that layer by layer until it dries. Then you put another layer. Because of the rush, they poured over too much cement and it fell over the night shift workers. From a distance, I could see people in stretchers being carried out, frozen in cement. When I got there, they were still digging out people. The cement was not completely hard, and there was this guy that they were trying to keep from going to shock. Half of his body was buried, but he was alive, only half buried. I don't know what it was, but to keep him awake, alert, and not to go into a coma or shock, the rescuers and his fellow construction workers kept singing Christmas songs. I was watching this. The half-buried man was identified as Benigno Aquino, one of the engineers of the construction. He happened to share the same name with an opposition politician who would be assassinated at the tarmac of the present-day Terminal 1 of what was then the Manila International Airport, now Ninoy Aquino International Airport, or in aviation vlogger sense, the Nichols International Airport. When this Aquino was finally free after 10 hours, he was still breathing, but he would die later. Mila Llorin, head of the marketing at the Manila International Film Festival, has said of the incident, and I quote, "I was told that they just cut up all of the ones that were exposed, removed, and built over, which is why the seats are very steep. It was a rush job, so the people were just, they had to finish it, period." You know that the Marcoses were concerned about the public perception on them. For fear that the accident would cause a scandal, there was a media blackout. Responders, medical workers, and media were only allowed access to the site 9 hours after the incident. By the time they were already there, at least 169 workers already died or were buried in the cement, which already hardened. Hong debunked this figure and stated that only 7 died and all of the bodies were retrieved and later given the proper funeral rites. But a lot of people still doubt his statement. I also doubt that, but you listeners are among those who doubt, right? The next logical step was to save the buried laborers as soon as possible by destroying the cement surfaces. Jackhammers were employed hours later with dire consequences. Witnesses remember the gruesome view of bodies sticking out of the pavement, helpless and hopeless. Some accounts state the exposed parts were tapered off or entombed, or should I say built over unceremoniously. This was because the rule was that they had to meet the deadline, no matter what happened. There is of course a scarce number of reports about this incident, but one cameraman from GMA Network captured scenes of the bodies turning up and being hauled away from the site as the dig-up continued. One scene showed a man buried in cement from the waist down, and this man had died once he was freed from the debris. This scene could answer the Benigno Aquino victim that I mentioned earlier. Nevertheless, the reports later pointed out that Betty Benitez ordered the inhumane decision to continue construction as if nothing happened. She must have done this on orders from her boss, who is no other than the First Lady Imelda Marcos herself. The latter ordered to do everything in her power and that she would not tolerate delays. And it was then that the hauntings and strange happenings began that day. Despite the government's attitude glossing over the incident in the film center just to meet the deadlines, it became worried that the fate of the first family connecting such to the incident. Sometime before the film center's opening on January 18, 1982, a fortune teller allegedly told then first daughter, later Ilocos governor, and now senator, Maria Imelda Romualdez Marcos, nicknamed Amy, that she would meet an untimely death if she stepped foot in the building. Whether this was truth or rumor, after the clairvoyant reading, no effort was spared to cleanse or exorcise this frightening building. There were exorcism rites, pagan rites, Catholic rites, and Chinese rites performed. Officers and the people protecting the first family were given these amulets, called in Tagalog as anting-antings, as well as talismans to ward off evil spirits. By January 18, 1982, opening day, as early as 5 a.m., a Filipino tribe from the Cordilleras known as Igorots, apparently invited sometime prior, performed another ritual, singing tribal songs, lamentations, and prayers to their ancestors, as well as telling any lingering spirit to cross over to the afterlife. Part of the ritual included rice threshing, dances, using lapises circling around their bodies, and 2 Igorot medicine women leading them. At the end, live animals that were used, such as pigs and chickens, were sacrificed, their innards and organs bleeding out from their wounds to the ground. The tribe then said that to ensure the spirits won't harm anyone, the sacrificial animals must be consumed by those attending the ritual, including the anxious Aimee. But the weirdest thing is that Aimee herself was unwilling to eat the sacrificial animals. She asked a restaurant to cater to the ritual and suggested that the Igorots eat the animals. And on top of that, even on the day of the festival, construction was still ongoing to polish the building hours before the official opening. The event was supposed to start at 7:30, but workers continued to sweep dust even 15 to 30 minutes before the start. It was also reported that there were still noticeable cement dust in the air due to ongoing work outside the center. The festival opened to the world, welcoming movies from 39 countries. 300 guests arrived in formal and elegant attire, such as many big-name actors, producers, and directors, like Peter Ustinov, Priscilla Presley, the widow of rock and roll king Elvis Presley, George Hamilton, British actor Sir Ben Kingsley, Brooke Shields, and to name a few. It is also remembered that Imelda herself donned a Joe Salazar terno in black and emerald green color with layered peacock feathers imported from India. The accident seemed forgotten. The cement was not completely dry, allegedly, but it didn't matter because international press raved about this grandiose event. Some guests left before the screening of the first movie, China's Plum Flower Embroidery, as rumors came that the terrorists forewarned the guests that there were explosives planted outside the film palace. Unbeknownst to the visitors, the wet cement was staining the hems of their clothes and the bottoms of their shoes. They were also stepping on the remains of hundreds of workers who were entombed in a cursed building. Some guests had uncomfortable experiences in steep seats that they were assigned to, but the ones who worked in the background or behind the scenes to make sure the event ran flawlessly would later share of strange paranormal experiences during the time. One was that of the ushers, who were hired from exclusive or private girls' schools in Metro Manila. They started smelling something odd backstage. Almost all of them recounted the feeling of something cold draft blowing, coupled with strange tingling of their skin, as if there was an invisible presence. Another was that the deceased workers of the November 17, 1981 incident showed themselves to their colleagues or even to the guests. Between days of this 12-day festival, it was publicized that Imelda Marcos threw parties at Malacanang where guests were treated to bottles of champagne costing about $100 worth each and roasted cow meat. There was another party at Fort Santiago where the First Lady was literally dazzling in diamond earrings, bracelets, and necklace. Some guests quoted her as almost having a style resembling the 1957 to 2022 monarch of the UK and the Commonwealth, the late Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. These parties were compared to 1920s Hollywood, you know, the Cecil B. DeMille type. For your information, Cecil B. DeMille is one of the founding fathers of American cinema. The parties also had a Camelot-like setting, bright night lights, disco lights, selections of good music, and even fireworks, not to mention of a parade of native dancers, beauty queens, religious floats carrying decorated figures of saints and the child Jesus, as the festivities coincided with the Santo Niño festivals in the provinces of Aklan, Iloilo, and Cebu. The First Lady also ended the night with dances alongside Jeremy Irons and George Hamilton. Films and actors won awards, and despite the event debated as a success or failure, it was able to generate an estimated $20 million worth of bought film, giving the director substantial validation that the festival was a success, despite critics claiming otherwise. Months later, there were stories of Betty Benitez frequenting the film center. Apparently, before that, Benitez died in a freak car accident after the film festival opened. Many allege that it was the souls of the victims or that a vengeful force that caused it. Her name is forever tied to the film center, as well as the role she played during the accident. To clear things up, Benitez did not die on the premises of the film center, but many believe that her spirit lingers in the building because even in death, she felt bad for her actions of following Imelda's orders. A medium who was sent to Manila Film Center supposedly claimed that the spirit had said, Betty is with us. Shh. Listen to the voices of the spirits as they reiterate what they say. Sometime later on, both historians and the public began looking at the film center's history and construction with critical eyes. They saw it as a symbol of greed and incompetence of the 1972 to 1986 Marcos presidency. Some of them even state that the accident was one of the elements that would lead to the downfall of the regime. The fate of the building mirrored this before the festival began and ended. Despite Imelda's good intentions for it and success, some setbacks began taking their toll on the film center. Many believed that a curse was placed on it. A year later, Imelda tried her best to get a $5 million subsidy for the festival, but this was denied after the tragedy by then Prime Minister Cesar Enrique Aguinaldo Virata. She then created a contingency plan that would generate enough funds to cover the festival. But after the festival, the upkeep of the building also needed financing, so therefore, there was a need for the center to generate revenue even without government help. Moreover, Imelda presented a solution in the form of a creation of an agency that we now know as the Movie and Television Review and Classification Board, or MTRCB for short. Initially created as the Board of Censors for Motion Pictures by virtue of Republic Act 3060, signed by then President Carlos P. Garcia in 1961, the agency had its name and powers changed throughout presidencies. When Ferdinand Marcos Sr. was in power, this agency was renamed to Board of Review for Motion Pictures, Television, and Live Entertainment. The MTRCB was only green-lighted through a presidential decree issued in 1986, and its name was changed to its current name before the Marcoses were ousted in that year's People Power Revolution, or what is known as EDSA 1 or EDSA 1986. The decree permitted the showing of films in the center, and much of these were almost in the level of soft pornography. In the Philippines, pornography or nude pictures or video or content is called as bomba, or should I say, bomba pictures. Despite this new way to generate income, the film center continued to struggle. Many later discovered that the film center was able to survive because of Imelda's loans or borrowings of money, and these debts began to surface. That is when the burden also fell on the shoulders of the Filipino people. The struggles and woes of the Manila Film Center did not stop despite the Marcos ouster. During the Cory Aquino administration, the Department of Foreign Affairs used this building as its passport processing operations center. Small gatherings and events continued here as well. Years later, in 1990, a 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck Luzon and was also felt in the national capital. The film center suffered structural damage to load-bearing beams on the west side. Its foundations left unstable, building posed danger to its occupants, and it was abandoned. After the film center was abandoned following the earthquake, groups of youths regularly frequented the site, exploring vacant theaters and seeing if anything of value was left behind. The film center also became a victim of looting and vandalism. A decade later, in 2001, the film center was rehabilitated at the cost of 300 million pesos. The program spearheaded by the then CCP President Armita Rufino, who lamented at the state of the building and decided that it must be put to good use, with the Department of Public Works and Highways, as well as the architect Froilan Hong and his firm, as part of this project. CCP Film Division OIC Ed Cabagnot hailed this project as a way to shed the deteriorating film center of its bad publicity, like Imelda Marcos, ghosts, pornographic films, or what you call the bomba. They all needed to be shaded away. Later on in the same year, a theater and performing arts company known as the Amazing Philippines, which consists of LGBTQ and transgender performers, leased the center in October and opened their show there on December 10, 2001. Their lease expired in 2009, and at that time, the Philippine Senate considered moving there from the GSIS building where they had been staying since 1997, citing that it would help them save money as tenancy in the film center costed less than renting the GSIS, which has an annual fee of 100 million pesos. Before they made their move, the amazing show leased the place again, but their second tenure there was short-lived as the curse of the film center struck once more. On February 19, 2013, sometime in the early hours of morning, a 3-hour fire engulfed the building, with structural damage estimated at 1.2 million pesos. In a strike of luck, no casualties were reported. With the relocation of the amazing show, the Senate considered refurbishment of the place and a move to take place later. These plans were later put on hold in 2014 by the then incumbent Senate President, Franklin Trilon. Now that we have ended the history, let's now talk of the frights that this forsaken building has to offer. Ever since then, the building was the subject of many scary stories. Rituals have been carried out as an attempt to rid the place of the lost and trapped souls. Many believe that these rituals were not that effective enough, and a lot of souls still remain. I did already mention about those paranormal experiences during the festival where usherettes and staff workers smelled something strange, felt unnatural wind blowing, and the guests and other workers of the festival seeing the ghosts or forms of the construction workers who died in the incident. So many people who visited heard strange sounds like cries or wailings, calls for help, and the like. Some had felt strange hot and cold running chills, as well as strange winds blowing. Some have felt, heard, and seen shadowy figures there too. During the DFA's tenure in the film center, the agency's employees said that they have been creeped out or spooked. They heard certain sounds when they worked alone, such as typewriters being used when no one was around. Many ghost hunters and lovers of the paranormal to this day continue to flock the film center in hopes that they can capture spirits on camera or audio to prove the existence of the spirits and souls and that the center is indeed haunted. Some of them did this to expose the truth of its history. Perhaps among the most chilling of tales of the exploration associated with this god-forsaken edifice was when a group of youths went to the place during daylight hours and entered it, beginning to roam the empty corridors. As they ventured deep into the media center's interior, the temperature dropped rapidly. The daylight streaming in from the broken windows began to dim until they can only see a few feet in front of them. They noticed what seemed to be viscous substances gently flowing down the walls on either side. Moving closer to the darkness, they realized that this was wet cement, with the main panels of the walls appearing to be in the process of melting and dripping down to the corridor. As they turned to leave, they heard a chilling scream and turned back to see one of their number staring down in shock at the ground below him or her. Much to their horror, they saw a disembodied blood-stained human arm reaching up the solid concrete floor wrapped around the youth's leg. The limb was apparently sliced open, with portions of gray bone exposed and covered by drying cement. Crying out in fear, the youth said a small prayer, invoking the name of Jesus Christ, and with the words, "In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, I command you to leave us," wherein he or she managed to yank himself or herself free of the captor and rejoined the rest of the group in fleeing the film center as quick as they can. Reaching the outside into the sunlight, they stopped to pause for a breath, already several miles away from the Manila Film Center, wherein they recounted of their ordeal. The youth in question pulled up the leg of his or her bottom wear to reveal a series of livid and purplish bruises left on the skin, resembling a handprint, as the others watched in horror. And here is the part wherein we will talk about the center's features in paranormal TV shows. The renowned ABS-CBN telemagazine program, Magandang Gabi Bayan, hosted by the famed broadcast journalist and 2004 to 2010 Vice President of the Philippines, Noli de Castro, was well known for its additional informatives on news and current affairs and helped in exposing anomalies and illegalities. Although known for its themed special episodes, one sets it apart from the rest. The Ondas, or Season of the Dead specials, or alternatively called as Halloween specials. These featured horror stories, with a number of them having ties to atrocities in history. The 1991 special featured the Film Center as one of its segments, not to mention that the Film Center itself was one of two studio settings in the special. At the time, the DFA had moved out of the place. Many stories of DFA employees and guests who visit the place were shown, like that of Elmer, who twice encountered horrific experiences, such as unexpectedly stepping on a polystyrene board with his name written in red blood letters, and a bulb crashing down from a ceiling that does not have a light bulb socket. Another employee told of moans and groans in its halls. Two security guards and janitors working shifts tell of restroom showers and taps turning on when their stalls were empty and toilets flushing on their own. Another ritual of exorcising the place was conducted, wherein it was proven here that the film center was not just home to the buried workers, but also to some film and theater actors and actresses, directors and producers and the like, with a huge number of the occupants being lost souls with no relation to the tragedy or the field of showbiz. Many of these lost souls called the film center as their stopping point when they could not find the light that would lead them to the afterlife. Some of these lost souls are those who haven't finished their mission on earth or are seeking justice just like what the buried workers do. This ritual also freed about 30 plus of the souls, where the others who remain asked the living for prayers and blessings. In the late 1990s, there was a gossip that one of the performers of the show was murdered and her body dumped on the steps. The ghost of the performer reportedly joined the ghosts that started haunting the area decades earlier. But recurring incidents occurred afterwards. Taxi drivers who pick up patrons near the center also reported to strange events. A local female appearing to be injured standing outside the center in the early hours of morning flagged them down and upon boarding looked upset and intimidated. This female asked the driver to take her to the nearest hospital for treatment for injuries, but in the midst of the journey, the woman would vanish. In 2006, GMA Network did an episode on the Film Center in the Howie Severino hosted Eyewitness. The host was not able to find the surviving relative of those who died. The witnesses he talked to had conflicted accounts. Therefore, he concluded that the stories were either false or a rumor and stated that all the buried workers were retrieved and given proper burials. As for me, I do have thoughts and reservations on this case, but I still uphold the belief that history cannot be rewritten or revised. However, we can only fully learn and understand it by looking into all perspectives. I still think of the workers and their families they left behind. I wonder if they got any compensation or settlement from the government. I do have thoughts that these were possible options, knowing that the Marcos regime did not care that a number had died. As part of fair game, I don't want to compare myself with horror podcasters, but I just wanted to share my take. Now that we have toured the Manila Film Center in its entirety, it is time that we leave this god-forsaken edifice and return to Mausoleum Manor before anyone of these spirits break free and attack us. Did you hear that? They're screaming for our help. Let's go. Now we're back at this grand hall of Mausoleum Manor with a big fireplace to keep us warm. Let me share some thoughts. But before that, I'd like to ask, how was your experience with this tour? Did you feel anything strange? But nevertheless, I saw this building in many things. One of the remainders of a mediocre dictatorial regime, a red flag of negligence, a shell of its former glory, and so many more. The rushed construction, unstable structures, inhumane treatment of the workers, these could be separate civil cases, but there is just one thing. I'm wondering what if this happened in any other presidency or regime? How about you? With no denial at all, the tragedy is forever etched in the list of Marcos era crimes, wherein little to no justice was given. Decades have passed since the incident, but memories of what happened there still live in the minds and hearts of the people. While we love to tell this story, be it in the spirit of Halloween, Season of the Dead, Samhain, or just a bedtime ghost story, we must still never forget that real lives were lost. Regardless of the truth or legend status of Manila Film Center's ghosts, there is no denial that there are real hauntings and ghosts left behind by an extremely messy, mediocre dictatorial regime that carried on with such great deal of impunity and less consequences. The regime still casts a shadow that reaches to this day, and nothing was done to dismantle its political machinery, and that is why the ghosts haunt us to this day. There is no denying that the Manila Film Center in its gruesome history must serve as a lesson to all that deliberate planning is paramount and that all things must be well thought out rather than being rushed. Truly, the walls of the Manila Film Center continue to be haunted by every event of the past, with the workers remaining trapped in the concrete and foundations they worked so long and hard to build, still constrained between the living world and the afterlife, reaching out in search of anyone who can offer the help that they were denied of. The film center is forever dubbed the largest tomb of the Philippines. It is the end and it's time to go. We are half an hour close to the dead of the night. You may all leave for your residences, or in case of our guests staying the night at Mausoleum Manor, you may return to your rooms. The butler will show you the way, but before we all rest in our beds, think about the poor souls still residing in the Manila Film Center and their kin, and don't forget to offer prayers for them. Thank you all for spending time with us tonight at Mausoleum Manor. Come back again if you want to hear more true horror stories. Bring your friends, families, and relatives if they'll believe the stories you tell. And it's also time for me to go too, as the dead of the night is approaching. More true horror stories will be told. Good night and pleasant dreams to all.